Marcus Chun sat in his small apartment, staring at the flashing red message on his communicator. 3 days without work, and his rent was due tomorrow. The Galactic Repair Guild had been slow lately, with most of the good contracts going to engineers with fancier degrees and newer equipment. He pressed the accept button before reading the details. Big mistake. The hologram showed a massive insectoid creature with 4 arms and glowing yellow eyes. Its voice came through the translator as a series of clicks and buzzes. Human technician Marcus Chun, you will report to Zirathi Prime immediately. Our Queen's life support system has failed. All previous repair attempts have been unsuccessful. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. Zirathi Prime? Everyone knew about the Zirathi Empire. They were one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with technology that made human engineering look like stone tools. They also had a reputation for eating aliens who disappointed them. Excuse me, Marcus said to the hologram. I think there's been a mistake. I'm just a basic tech repair guy. I fix air conditioners and food processors. You need someone with quantum engineering credentials. The Zirathi's antennae twitched. 17 engineers have attempted repairs. All have failed. The guild has recommended you as our final option. Payment will be 50,000 credits. Marcus's jaw dropped. 50,000 credits would pay his rent for 2 years. When do I leave? 6 hours later, Marcus found himself on a transport ship heading towards Zirathi space. The other passengers, mostly traders and diplomats, gave him strange looks. Humans rarely visited Zirathi territory, and when they did, it was usually as part of large diplomatic missions with heavy security. The ship's captain, a blue-skinned vegan, pulled Marcus aside before they docked. Listen, human. The Zirathi are not like us. They think in terms of castes and hierarchies. You are considered the lowest form of life to them. Keep your head down, fix whatever needs fixing, and leave quickly. The Zirathi homeworld looked like a nightmare made of metal and glass. Massive towers stretched into the purple sky, connected by tubes and bridges that buzzed with flying vehicles. The air smelled like ozone and something Marcus couldn't identify. Everything was too sharp, too angular, and too big for human comfort. 2 Zirathi guards met him at the spaceport. They were each 8 feet tall, with chitinous armor that looked like it had grown from their bodies. They didn't speak to Marcus, just pointed toward a hovering platform that would take him to the palace. The palace was even more intimidating than the city. It rose from the ground like a giant insect hive, all curves and organic-looking metal. Thousands of Zirathi moved through its corridors, each one ignoring Marcus completely. He felt like a mouse walking through a factory. A smaller Zirathi, wearing what looked like a technician's harness, finally approached him. You are the human engineer. Technician, Marcus corrected. What seems to be the problem? The Zirathi made a sound that the translator couldn't process. The Queen's atmospheric control system. It regulates the air in her private chambers. Without it, she cannot leave her sealed quarters. She will die within days if it is not repaired. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Marcus noticed that every surface was covered in complex displays and control panels. The Zirathi had turned their entire palace into one giant computer system. It was impressive, but it also looked incredibly complicated. How many engineers have tried to fix it? Marcus asked. 17. The best from 5 different worlds. They have all declared it impossible to repair. The Zirathi stopped in front of a massive door. The device is beyond this entrance. You may examine it, but do not touch anything without permission. The Queen watches all repairs personally. The door slid open, revealing a chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The ceiling stretched up 50 feet, covered in what looked like living crystal. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the air itself seemed to shimmer. In the center of the room sat a device that hurt to look at directly. It was about the size of a car, but it seemed to fold in on itself in ways that didn't make sense. Tubes and cables connected it to the walls, floor, and ceiling. Holographic displays floated around it, showing readouts and symbols Marcus had never seen. It hummed with power, but the hum was wrong somehow, like a song with notes missing. "The Queen will arrive shortly," the technician said, then backed away toward the door. Marcus approached the device carefully. Up close, he could see that it was actually quite beautiful. The metal had been shaped to look like flowing water, and lights moved through transparent sections like blood through veins. But something was definitely wrong with it. The air around the device felt thick and stale. The holographic displays flickered randomly, and that humming sound was getting worse, like a motor that needed oil. Heavy footsteps echoed from the entrance. Marcus turned to see the largest Zirathi he had ever imagined walking into the chamber. She had to be 12 feet tall, with 6 arms instead of the usual 4. Her chitin was deep purple, almost black, and covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move when Marcus wasn't looking directly at them. A crown of crystalline spines grew from her skull, and her eyes were like looking into yellow fire. This had to be Queen Zixthara. "So," she said, her voice making the air vibrate, "you are the human who will succeed where our greatest engineers have failed." Marcus swallowed hard. "I'll do my best, Your Majesty." The Queen moved closer, and Marcus could smell something like cinnamon and metal. "Do you know what this device does, human? It controls your atmospheric systems. It does much more than that. It maintains the precise chemical balance I require to survive. It regulates pressure, humidity, temperature, and 12 different gas concentrations. Without it, I will suffocate within hours." Her eyes fixed on Marcus. Previous engineers have tried to improve it, to make it more efficient. They have only made it worse. Marcus nodded, understanding dawning. They've been trying to upgrade it instead of fixing what's broken. You speak strangely for an engineer. I'm not an engineer, Your Majesty. I'm just a guy who fixes things. For the first time, Queen Zixthara's expression changed. Her antennae tilted forward in what might have been curiosity. "Then fix this, human who fixes things. Fix it or die trying." Marcus set down his tool bag and walked around the device slowly. Queen Zixthara watched him from across the chamber, her 6 arms crossed in a way that looked both elegant and threatening. Several other Zirathi had entered the room, probably advisors or engineers who wanted to see the human fail. "May I touch it?" Marcus asked. The Queen's antennae twitched. The others always began with their scanners and analysis tools. "I'm not the others. Proceed." Marcus placed his hands on the smooth metal surface. It was warm, almost body temperature, and he could feel a slight vibration running through it. He closed his eyes and listened. The device was talking to him, telling him what was wrong. "When did the problem start?" he asked, not moving his hands. 3 months ago, replied one of the advisors, a Zirathi with silver markings on his chitin. Small fluctuations in the atmospheric readings. Nothing serious at first. And the first repair attempt? 2 months ago. Engineer Valdix of the Technical Collective declared the device obsolete. He attempted to install modern quantum processors to improve efficiency. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at the advisor. "Show me what he did." The Zirathi activated a holographic display that showed the device's internal structure. Marcus could see several new components that stuck out like sore thumbs. They were sleek and modern, but they didn't belong. It was like someone had tried to install a quantum computer inside a classical piano. He replaced the primary control matrix? Marcus asked. Yes, the original was deemed primitive. Marcus shook his head and began opening panels on the device. Inside, he found exactly what he expected. a mess of incompatible systems trying to work together. Beautiful, organic-looking circuits had been spliced together with harsh, angular components. It was like seeing a garden that someone had tried to improve by adding neon lights and concrete. Who else worked on it? Marcus asked as he examined the internal connections. Engineer Plutax attempted to recalibrate the new systems, another advisor said. When that failed, Engineer Zendrix tried to add stabilizing buffers. Then Engineer, stop, Marcus said. How many people have been inside this thing? 17 engineers. Each one tried to improve upon the previous work. Marcus sat back on his heels and rubbed his face. No wonder the device was sick. 17 different people had been poking around inside it, each one adding their own idea of what would make it better. It was like a recipe that 17 different cooks had tried to improve at the same time. Your Majesty, Marcus said, turning to face the Queen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me. Queen Zixthar's eyes narrowed. Speak. How did this device work before the problem started? Perfectly. For over 200 years, it maintained ideal conditions without fail. Then the original design was good. Really good. The problem isn't that it needs improvement. The problem is that too many people have tried to improve it. Silence fell over the chamber. The advisors looked at each other with what Marcus was learning to recognize as Xerathi confusion. Their antennae drooped and their eyes dimmed. You suggest we remove the improvements? The silver-marked advisor asked. I suggest we fix what's broken and stop trying to make it better than it already was. Marcus opened more panels and started taking pictures with his tablet. The device was actually a work of art inside. The original builders had created something that looked alive, with flowing lines and organic connections that seemed to breathe with the machine's rhythm. But 17 different improvements had turned it into a mess of competing systems. This is going to take some time, Marcus said, and I'm going to need to remove almost everything that's been added in the last 3 months. Queen Zixthara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. The other engineers all insisted on adding new components. You wish to remove them? Your Majesty, imagine you have a perfect musical instrument. It plays beautiful music every day for 200 years. Then one day, it starts playing a few wrong notes. What would you do? Find the wrong notes and correct them. Exactly. But what if 17 different musicians each decided the instrument needed improvement? What if they all added new strings and changed the tuning and installed new sound amplifiers? The Queen's eyes brightened with understanding. It would no longer be the same instrument. Right, and it would probably sound terrible. Marcus pulled out his basic diagnostic tools. He had a simple multimeter, a basic oscilloscope, and a toolkit that most engineers would laugh at. But these tools had served him well for 15 years. They told him what he needed to know without overwhelming him with data he didn't need. He started with the power systems. The original device had drawn energy in a smooth, steady flow. Now the power readings jumped around like a nervous heartbeat. He traced the connections and found the first problem, a modern power regulator that was fighting with the original power management system. Found something, Marcus said. This regulator here? It's trying to smooth out power fluctuations that aren't actually problems. It's making the whole system work harder than it needs to. He carefully disconnected the regulator and immediately heard the device's hum become smoother. The Queen stepped closer, her massive frame casting a shadow over Marcus as he worked. The sound is different, she observed. Better? Yes. How did you know? Marcus looked up at her. I listened. Your original engineers built this thing to sound right when it's working right. All those diagnostics and readings are useful, but sometimes you just need to listen to the machine. He moved to the next problem area, the atmospheric sensors. Someone had installed quantum sensors that could measure gas concentrations down to individual molecules. They were incredibly precise, but they were also incredibly sensitive. They were detecting changes that were too small to matter and trying to correct them constantly. These sensors are like having someone constantly adjusting the temperature in your house by tiny amounts. Marcus explained as he worked. They're so sensitive that they're making corrections for problems that don't exist. One by one, Marcus removed the improvements and restored the original connections. Each time he fixed something, the device sounded a little better, hummed a little smoother. The Queen watched every move he made, asking questions about why he chose to remove this component or reconnect that circuit. "You work very differently from the others," she said after Marcus had been working for 3 hours. "How so?" They relied on their instruments to tell them what was wrong. "You seem to know what is wrong before you measure it." Marcus paused in his work. "Experience, I guess. I fixed a lot of machines that people have tried to improve to death. You learn to see the patterns." "Patterns?" "The way components fight each other when they're not supposed to work together. The way a system sounds when it's stressed. The way connections look when they've been forced into configurations they weren't designed for." Marcus gestured at the device. "This machine is like a living thing. It has a natural rhythm, a natural flow. All these improvements were disrupting that flow." As the day wore on, Marcus continued his work. He removed quantum processors and replaced them with simple switches. He disconnected advanced monitoring systems and reconnected basic feedback loops. With each change, the device became more like its original self. Finally, as the chamber's lights dimmed to simulate evening, Marcus made the last connection and stepped back. The device hummed with a deep, satisfied sound that filled the chamber with harmony. The Queen breathed deeply, and for the first time since Marcus had arrived, she smiled. "Perfect," she said. "It is perfect again." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag and started packing his tools. "Just needed to remember what it was supposed to be." "Human Marcus Chun," the Queen said, her voice formal again. "You have succeeded where our greatest minds failed." "How?" Marcus thought about it for a moment. "I guess because I didn't try to make it better. I just tried to make it work." Marcus expected to leave Zerethi Prime the next morning. His job was done. The Queen's device worked perfectly, and he had earned enough credits to live comfortably for months. But as he packed his tools, the same silver-marked advisor who had questioned him the day before appeared in his guest quarters. "The Queen requests your presence," the Zerethi said. "There are other matters that require attention." Marcus found Queen Zixthar in a different chamber. This one filled with floating holographic displays showing various parts of the palace complex. She turned as he entered, and Marcus noticed she looked more relaxed than she had the day before. "Human Marcus Chun, your repair work has been exceptional. I have a proposition for you." "I'm listening." "My palace systems require constant maintenance. 17 different engineering teams have worked on various components over the years, each adding their own improvements. I suspect many of them suffer from the same problems you corrected yesterday." Marcus looked at the displays floating around the room. Each one showed a different system: water purification, gravity control, communication networks, transportation tubes. Even from here, he could see signs of over-engineering in several of them. "You want me to simplify everything?" "I want you to make everything work the way it was designed to work." The Queen gestured to one of the displays. "This is our main transportation system. It moves people and materials throughout the palace. Last month, it began experiencing random delays and route conflicts." Marcus studied the display. The transportation system looked like a 3-dimensional spiderweb, with tubes and platforms connecting every part of the palace. But he could see areas where the flow patterns didn't make sense, where newer additions disrupted the original design. "Someone added express routes?" he asked. Engineer Kelthax installed high-speed bypass tubes to improve efficiency. But they created bottlenecks in other areas. "It's like adding more lanes to a highway without thinking about where they connect to the existing roads," Marcus said. "Can I see the original design?" The Queen activated another display, showing the transportation system as it had been built centuries ago. Marcus immediately saw the difference. The original design flowed like a river system, with natural branches and convergence points. The new additions cut across this flow like dams, creating artificial pressure points. "This will take a few days to fix properly," Marcus said. "But I can do it." "Excellent." There are also issues with our food distribution network, our atmospheric control for the lower levels, and our communication relay systems. Marcus realized he was looking at weeks of work, maybe months. "Your Majesty, I'm just one person. Maybe you should hire a team of engineers who think the way I do." "There are no engineers who think the way you do," the Queen said. "I have consulted with experts from 12 different worlds. They all approach problems the same way: analyze, theorize, improve, complicate. You are the first to approach problems by understanding." Over the following days, Marcus worked his way through the palace's various systems. Each one told the same story: original designs that had worked perfectly for decades or centuries. Then a series of improvements that had created more problems than they solved. The food distribution system had been upgraded with quantum storage containers that preserve food perfectly, but created scheduling conflicts. With the delivery network, Marcus replaced them with simpler containers that worked with the existing timing. The communication system had been enhanced with universal translators that could handle 97 different languages. But they introduced delays and confusion in simple conversations between Zerathi, who all spoke the same language. Marcus created bypass routes for internal communications while keeping the translators for external contacts. Each repair taught Marcus more about Zerathi thinking. They were brilliant engineers who could create incredible technology, but they had a blind spot. They couldn't stop improving things. Where humans might say, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," the Zerathi seemed to believe that everything could always be made better. On his 5th day in the palace, Marcus was working on the gravity control system when Queen Zixthara appeared with several advisors he hadn't met before. They wore different markings than the technical advisors, and their posture was more formal. "Human Marcus Chun," the Queen said. "These are diplomatic advisors. They have a problem that is not technical in nature, but I believe your approach might be helpful." One of the advisors, with golden markings across his chiton, stepped forward. "We are in negotiations with the Valerian Trade Federation. They have accused us of manipulating shipping schedules to favor our own merchants. We have provided detailed data proving this is not the case, but they refuse to accept our evidence." Marcus set down his tools and wiped his hands. "What kind of data did you provide?" "Complete shipping logs, route optimization algorithms, fuel efficiency calculations, and profit margin analyses," another advisor said. "The data clearly shows that our scheduling decisions are based on efficiency, not favoritism." "Did you ask them why they think you're being unfair?" The advisors looked confused. Their antennae drooped slightly. "We provided data. Data does not require explanation." Marcus almost smiled. It was the same problem he'd been fixing in their machines: overcomplication instead of understanding the basic issue. "Can you set up a meeting with these Valerian negotiators?" "They have refused further meetings until we address their concerns. Tell them a human consultant wants to talk with them. Not to argue or provide more data, just to understand their perspective." The meeting took place the next day. The Valerian delegation consisted of 3 bear-like creatures with thick fur and small, intelligent eyes. They looked suspicious when Marcus entered the conference room. "I'm not here to argue with you," Marcus said as he sat down. "I just want to understand why you think the Zerathi are treating your merchants unfairly." The lead Valerian, who introduced himself as Trade Captain Gorthik, relaxed slightly. "It's not about the data. We know they can make data say whatever they want. Then what is it about?" "Respect," Gorthik said. "For 200 years, Valerian merchants have been welcomed at Zerathi ports. We follow their customs. We respect their procedures. But lately, it feels like we're being pushed aside for newer trading partners." Marcus nodded. "Can you give me an example?" "Last month, 3 of our cargo ships were delayed for routine inspections, while a Nexian trading fleet was processed immediately. The Zerathi said it was due to efficiency protocols, but it felt like they were showing favor to the Nexians because they have newer technology." Marcus turned to the Zerathi advisors. "Is that what happened?" The Nexian ships had updated transponder systems that allowed automated processing. The Valerian ships required manual inspection due to their older equipment. It was purely a matter of efficiency. "But you didn't explain that to the Valerians?" "We provided the processing data. The reason was obvious from the information." Marcus looked back at Captain Gorthik. If they had explained about the transponder systems, would that have made a difference? "Of course. We're not stupid. We understand efficiency. We just wanted to know we weren't being deliberately slighted." The solution was embarrassingly simple. The Zerathi needed to communicate their reasoning, not just their decisions. They were so focused on being efficient that they forgot to be considerate. Within an hour, Marcus had helped both sides create a new protocol. Whenever shipping delays occurred, the Zerathi would provide a brief explanation of the cause. The Valerians would upgrade their transponder systems over the next year to reduce processing times. Both sides left the meeting satisfied. Queen Zixthara walked with Marcus back to his quarters that evening. "How did you know what to do?" "I didn't, really. I just listened to both sides and tried to figure out what they actually needed, instead of what they said they needed. The Valerians needed respect, and your people needed the Valerians to understand that efficiency wasn't the same as disrespect." The Queen was quiet for a long moment. "You solve problems differently than we do." "How do you solve problems?" "We analyze the data, determine the optimal solution, and implement it. If others do not understand or accept the solution, that is their failing." Marcus shook his head. "That's like fixing a machine without listening to the sounds it makes. You might get it working, but you won't understand why it was broken. And understanding why is important. Understanding why is everything. If you don't know why something breaks, you can't really fix it. You can only patch it until it breaks again." The Queen stopped walking and turned to face Marcus. Her massive frame towered over him, but her expression was thoughtful rather than threatening. "I have been queen for 50 years, she said. "I have solved countless problems through analysis and decisive action. But many of those problems have returned in different forms. You suggest that I have been patching rather than fixing?" Marcus considered his words carefully. "I think you've been solving the problems you could see instead of the problems that were actually there." "Show me the difference." "Your atmospheric device wasn't broken because it was old. It was broken because 17 engineers couldn't leave it alone. The real problem wasn't the device. It was the assumption that working technology always needs improvement." The Queen's eyes brightened with understanding. And the trade dispute was not about shipping data. It was about Marcus had been on Zerathi Prime for 3 weeks when Queen Zixthara summoned him to her private chambers. Not the technical rooms where he had been working, but her actual living space. He had never seen a Zerathi personal quarters before, and it was surprisingly beautiful. The walls curved like the inside of a seashell, covered in patterns that shifted color as the light changed. Soft music played from hidden sources, and the air smelled like flowers Marcus couldn't identify. It was elegant and peaceful, nothing like the harsh industrial spaces he had seen elsewhere in the palace. The queen sat on what looked like a grown chair rather than a built one, its organic curves matching her body perfectly. She gestured for Marcus to sit across from her on a smaller but similarly shaped seat. "You have been here 21 days, she said. "In that time, you have repaired 17 different systems, resolved 3 diplomatic disputes, and prevented what could have become a serious labor conflict in our manufacturing district." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The labor issue had been another case of over-engineering. The Zirathi had installed productivity monitoring systems that tracked every worker's movements and efficiency ratings. The workers felt like they were being treated as machines rather than people. Marcus had suggested simpler metrics that focused on overall output rather than individual surveillance. "I just tried to help where I could," Marcus said. "You have done more than help. You have shown me a different way of thinking about problems." The queen leaned forward. "Tell me, Marcus Chun, what do you know about Zirathi succession laws?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "Nothing, Your Majesty. I didn't even know you had succession laws. When a Zirathi queen reaches the end of her fertile period, she must choose a designated mate to rule beside her. This individual becomes co-ruler of the empire and father to the next generation of royalty." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Where was this conversation going? "The traditional choice is the strongest male from the warrior caste," the queen continued. "He is expected to lead our military, make strategic decisions, and ensure the strength of the royal bloodline." That sounds traditional. I have interviewed 17 potential designated mates over the past 5 years. All of them think exactly the same way. They see problems as obstacles to be overcome through force or superior technology. They propose solutions based on strength, dominance, and control. Marcus was beginning to see where this was heading, and it terrified him. "Yesterday, I received a report from the Council of Advisors," the queen said. "They are concerned about your influence on palace operations. They believe you are making our systems too simple, too primitive. They worry that our enemies will see this as weakness." "Are you asking me to leave?" "I am asking you to stay. Permanently." The queen stood and walked to a window that looked out over the city. Marcus could see thousands of Zirathi going about their daily lives, unaware that their queen was about to propose something that would shock their entire civilization. "Marcus Chun," she said without turning around, "I want you to become my designated mate." Marcus nearly fell off his chair. "Your Majesty, I'm human. I'm not even the same species. Zirathi law does not specify species requirements. It only requires that the designated mate be intelligent, capable of leadership, and able to provide guidance in matters of empire management. But I'm nobody. I fix machines for a living." The queen turned back to face him. "You fix everything for a living. Machines, systems, conflicts, misunderstandings. In 3 weeks, you have solved more fundamental problems than my advisors have solved in 3 years." Marcus stood up, pacing to the window. The city below looked alien and impossibly complex. "Your Majesty, I can't rule an empire. I don't know anything about politics or military strategy or any of the things rulers need to know." "What do rulers need to know, Marcus Chun? How to make good decisions, how to understand what people need, how to solve problems that affect millions of lives. And what have you been doing for the past 3 weeks?" Marcus paused. When she put it that way, it sounded less impossible. But still, the council won't accept a human as co-ruler. Your people won't follow someone from a species they consider primitive. The council follows strength and success. You have succeeded where their experts failed. As for my people, the queen moved closer to Marcus. Do you know why Zerathi civilization has remained unchanged for over 1,000 years? Because it works? Because we are afraid of change. We improve our technology constantly, but we never change our fundamental approaches to problems. We analyze, we optimize, we dominate. We do not adapt. She gestured toward the window. Look at our city. Every building is a fortress. Every system is designed for maximum efficiency. Every citizen has a defined role in our hierarchy. It is a perfect machine. It sounds stable. It is dying, Marcus Chen. We have become so efficient, so optimized, that we have lost the ability to truly change when change is needed. Our birth rates are declining. Our young people are leaving for other worlds. Our trading partners find us difficult to work with. Her eyes met his. We need someone who thinks differently. We need someone who sees problems we cannot see. Marcus felt the weight of what she was asking. Why me? There must be other humans with more qualifications. There are humans with more education, more experience in leadership. But you have something more important. What's that? You understand that the purpose of any system is to serve the people who depend on it, not to demonstrate how clever its designers are. They stood in silence for several minutes. Marcus watched the city below and tried to imagine being responsible for all those lives. It was overwhelming. What would happen if I said yes? You would become Prince Consort of the Zerathi Empire. You would have equal authority with me in all matters of governance. Your decisions would affect billions of lives across dozens of worlds. And if I said no? You would return to your previous life with gratitude and payment for services rendered. No one would think less of you. Marcus laughed, surprising himself. Your Majesty, 3 weeks ago I was worried about paying rent on a tiny apartment. Now you're asking me to help rule an empire. 3 weeks ago, you were a technician who fixed broken machines. Now you are a person who fixes broken systems. The only difference is scale. There's a pretty big difference between fixing a food processor and managing interstellar trade policy. Is there? Both require understanding what people need, identifying what prevents them from getting it, and finding the simplest solution that actually works. Marcus had to admit she had a point. Every problem he had solved on Zerathi Prime had followed the same basic pattern. Identify what was really broken, remove the unnecessary complications, and restore the system to its intended function. If I agreed to this, what would you expect from me? Partnership, the Queen said immediately. I am skilled at analysis, strategic thinking, and decisive action. You are skilled at understanding, communication, and finding simple solutions to complex problems. Together, we could create something neither of us could achieve alone. A more adaptive empire, a more human empire. Not in the sense of species, but in the sense of remembering that the purpose of civilization is to serve its people, not to impress them with its complexity. Marcus turned away from the window and faced the Queen directly. She was offering him something impossible, a chance to make a real difference on a scale he had never imagined. But she was also asking him to leave everything familiar behind and step into a role he wasn't sure he could handle. Can I have some time to think about it? Of course. But Marcus Chun? Yes, Your Majesty? Whatever you decide, know that you have already changed how I think about leadership. You have shown me that the strongest solutions are not always the most complex ones, and that understanding a problem is more important than analyzing it. As Marcus walked back to his quarters, he realized that the Queen had already begun to change too. 3 weeks ago, she had been focused on finding the optimal solution to her device problem. Now she was thinking about finding the optimal solution to her empire's future. Maybe she was right. Maybe the skills that made him good at fixing machines would work for fixing civilizations, too. The thought was terrifying and exciting at the same time. Marcus spent 2 sleepless nights thinking about the Queen's proposal. He walked through the palace corridors at all hours, watching the Zirathi go about their daily routines. They moved with purpose and efficiency, but he noticed something else. They rarely seemed happy. Their conversations were brief and formal. They worked constantly, but showed little satisfaction in their achievements. On the third morning, Marcus found Queen Zixthara in her morning chamber, reviewing reports from across the Empire. She looked up as he entered, her yellow eyes alert but patient. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, "I have an answer, but it comes with conditions." The Queen's antennae tilted forward with interest. "Speak." "I'll accept your proposal, but I won't be a traditional designated mate. I don't want to rule over people. I want to work with them." "Explain." Marcus took a deep breath. "The problems I've been solving here aren't really about technology or diplomacy. They're about communication. People not understanding each other, systems not working together, solutions that create new problems because nobody asked the right questions." He gestured toward the reports floating around the Queen. "You're getting constant updates from every world in your empire. But are you learning anything useful from them?" The Queen considered this. "The reports contain all necessary data for decision-making. But do they tell you how people are feeling? Whether your policies are actually working the way you intended? Whether there are problems developing that don't show up in the official numbers?" Marcus moved to one of the holographic displays, showing production statistics from a mining world. "This world shows steady output increases for the past year. Looks good, right? Excellent productivity. But what if those increases came from pushing workers harder rather than improving efficiency? What if the miners are getting injured more often, or if they're working longer hours for the same pay? What if they're angry but afraid to complain?" The Queen's expression shifted. "How would we know such things?" "By asking them. By listening to them. By treating them as people with valuable insights rather than just numbers in a report." Marcus spent the next hour explaining his vision. Instead of ruling from above, he wanted to create systems that listened from below. Regular communication with workers, traders, and ordinary citizens. Feedback mechanisms that caught problems before they became crises. Decision-making processes that considered not just efficiency, but also human satisfaction and long-term sustainability. "You want to make our empire more." The Queen searched for the right word. "Soft? I want to make it more responsive. Strong things break under stress. Flexible things adapt and survive." The Queen was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. "Your conditions are acceptable. But we must be careful about how we implement these changes. The Council of Advisors already sees you as a disruptive influence." That afternoon, Marcus attended his first official council meeting as Prince Consort. The advisors' reaction was exactly what he had expected. Their antennae drooped with disapproval, and their posture conveyed skepticism bordering on hostility. "Your Majesty," said the silver-marked advisor who had first questioned Marcus, "we must protest this decision. A human cannot understand the complexities of Zirathi governance." "Advisor Thexfer," the Queen replied, "Prince Consort Marcus has solved more governance problems in 3 weeks than this council has solved in 3 months. "Technical problems," another advisor interjected. "Leadership requires strategic thinking, military knowledge, and understanding of interstellar politics." Marcus stood up slowly. "Advisor Thexfer, you mentioned complexity. Can you give me an example of a complex problem this council is currently facing?" Thexfer's eyes brightened with what Marcus recognized as eager anticipation. "The Nexian border dispute. 3 star systems claim overlapping mining rights. Each system presents legal documents supporting their claims. The legal analysis alone requires 17 different specialists. What do the miners want?" "The miners? The people actually doing the mining. What do they want?" "They want to mine, obviously. And are they currently able to mine?" Dexver looked confused. The dispute prevents all mining operations in the contested areas. So while you're analyzing legal documents, nobody is mining anything. And everyone is losing money. The legal issues must be resolved first. Marcus turned to the Queen. May I suggest a different approach? She gestured for him to continue. What if we focus on getting the mining started while we figure out the legal stuff? Set up a temporary mining cooperative where all three systems share the output until the ownership is settled. Everyone gets something instead of everyone getting nothing. The council members looked at each other with expressions Marcus was learning to read as extreme discomfort. Their antennae twitched nervously. But the legal precedent, one advisor protested. The legal precedent is that disputes shouldn't stop people from working together, Marcus said. And the practical result is that everyone makes money while the lawyers figure things out. Within 6 months, the temporary mining cooperative had become a permanent alliance, with all three systems benefiting more from cooperation than any of them would have gained from sole ownership. It was the first of many changes. Marcus introduced regular communication sessions where citizens could speak directly with regional governors. He created feedback systems that allowed workers to suggest improvements to their operations without fear of punishment. He established trade mediation services that helped resolve commercial disputes before they became political crises. The changes weren't always easy. Many Zerethi administrators struggled with the idea of asking subordinates for opinions. Some citizens were suspicious of suddenly being asked what they thought about government policies. A few military commanders complained that considering soldiers, feelings undermined discipline, but the results spoke for themselves. Productivity increased across the empire, not through harder work but through better coordination. Trade disputes decreased as communication improved. Worker satisfaction surveys, a concept that had never existed in Zerethi society, showed steady improvement. The most dramatic change came in the palace itself. Marcus insisted on regular meetings where staff members could suggest operational improvements. The Zerethi had always prided themselves on efficiency, but they discovered that their workers had been working around inefficiencies for years without anyone asking for their input. "You have changed us," Queen Zixthara said one evening as they reviewed reports showing improved conditions across multiple worlds. "Not just our policies, but the way we think about problems." "We changed ourselves," Marcus corrected. "I just suggested that we ask better questions. What is the difference between Zerethi problem-solving and human problem-solving?" Marcus considered the question. "You look at a problem and ask, how can we fix this? We look at a problem and ask, why is this broken?" Different questions lead to different solutions. The Queen's communication device chimed with an incoming message from the outer colonies. Instead of automatically forwarding it to the appropriate department, she activated the display so both of them could see it. Trade Captain Morthic requests permission to modify shipping routes through the Delian system, she read. Standard request, easily approved. Why does he want to modify the routes? The message doesn't specify. Efficiency improvement, presumably. Marcus activated his own communication panel and sent a direct message to Captain Morthic. Within minutes, they received a detailed response. Recent solar flare activity had made the standard routes dangerous for ships with older shielding. The modified route would take longer, but would be safer for smaller trading vessels. He wasn't asking for efficiency, Marcus said. He was asking for safety. But he knew the system only approved requests based on efficiency gains. The Queen stared at the message. How many requests have we approved or denied based on incomplete information? Probably most of them. People learn to tell you what you want to hear instead of what you need to know. That night, the Queen issued a new policy. All requests for operational changes must include the actual reason for the request, not just the bureaucratic justification. Within weeks, Administrators across the empire were learning about problems they had never known existed. Year after Marcus became Prince Consort, representatives from 12 different civilizations requested meetings to discuss Zerathi-style problem-solving techniques. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. They wanted to learn human approaches to conflict resolution, but they thought they were learning alien technology. Should we tell them the truth? The Queen asked as they prepared for a major diplomatic conference. What truth is that? That we're not teaching them Zerathi methods. We're teaching them human methods. Marcus smiled. Does it matter? The methods work regardless of what species invented them. The conference was a success. The Zerathi Empire, once known for rigid efficiency and intimidating technology, became known as mediators and problem solvers. Other civilizations started bringing them disputes that had seemed impossible to resolve. Each case followed the same pattern Marcus had learned in his first weeks on Zerathi Prime. Identify what people actually needed, remove the unnecessary complications, and find solutions that worked for everyone involved. You know what's funny?